guys. Today's video is going to be, it's not going to be very long, it'll be relatively short. I'm going to look at one of our syllabus points here. Tomorrow I'll do more about e-commerce and go into detail about e-commerce, and then next week, well, is that right? I think that's next week. Yeah, next week we get to marketing. So we're still kind of on schedule here, but we're going to have, we have a case study and class test. It's going to be on free trade agreements. It's probably going to be on Friday next week. So that's what you need to be studying. And it'll include some of these other topics here, these week 5 and 6. So what government incentives can be given for trade, and also a little bit about free trade agreements. I'll go over that question that was on the test that I talked about before. There'll be a little bit about e-commerce. I might review something on Monday. Or the first class next week. Okay, so benefits and challenges to Australian-owned businesses as a result of free trade agreements. Okay, so most of the analysis of trade that we did or that we've talked about so far is an analysis of trade from a global perspective. You know, it should increase the amount of wealth and GDP and production. And we can also think about it in terms of an individual country. So how countries are affected, both positively and negatively. Australia gets benefits, but it also loses some manufacturing jobs to cheaper producers in other countries. So in your notebook, you should probably have different sections like the features of free trade agreements. I went over them. I also did that on the phone, the Zoom last time. Features of free trade agreements, and then have the benefits or the advantages and benefits for the country and some possible drawbacks for the country. So you want to have both sides of free trade agreements for the country. You want to know what the difference between absolute and comparative advantage is. Definitely want to know that. And this bullet point here, so it says features, okay, role. The role is to make trade easier. But here it's a different one, and I want to highlight that it's different, so be careful. The benefits and challenges to Australian-owned businesses as a result of free trade agreements. So there's the macroeconomic effects that affect employment, that affect skills and transfer of technology. There are the costs and the price changes that come into the market with more competition. So those are all macro national issues. This question is asking about the business and the micro effects of a free trade agreement. So if you're one company and you're feeling that there's a free trade agreement, what are the effects? And they phrase it like benefits and challenges. So it's not so much in like, oh, okay, disadvantage. Maybe it's a disadvantage, or maybe you can adapt. So the challenges are the things that you need to adapt to. As an individual company, your primary focus is, from a free trade agreement, is not going to be about, employment, although You might have to cut back some of your workers. That might be a challenge. Okay, what do you do with the skilled employees that you have that are more expensive than other countries? That's a challenge. But what it's really talking about, and the thing that's the primary thing that most businesses would be, they're going to have two main things they have to either do. They have to protect their home market. So by protecting their home market, the challenge is going to be to be more efficient. It's going to be to have strategies that are able to cope with increased competition in the market. It's going to be able to understand your customers and have customer focus. And so you're the business that's old. You should understand your customers better than the new competitors that are coming in. This is for Australian businesses. So these are established businesses who have good marketing budgets and good understanding of their brands within their economy. This is not asking about a developing country with a huge brand like Nestle crashing down on top of the local companies. This is about Australia. So for the most part, let's put it into some categories. The challenges that they'll have is maintaining efficiency and profit margins given the extra competition, keeping their customers aware of the differences between their, the differentiation between their local products. You can even emphasize that it's a local Australian-made product. How to do with the competition with labor, depending on production, whether or not you have to produce it in Australia or not, compared to whether or not it can be manufactured outside of Australia. So you have to manage your staff. You also have to manage the developments and changes within the staff. Change management, which we'll talk about later this semester. So the challenges for the business are based around adapting to the new competition based on the free trade, right? There's no tariffs to protect you. If local businesses had some support from the Australian government, then in most free trade agreements, they should not be able to have that support either. So maybe they'll have to get used to surviving in a more competitive marketplace because they don't have government support either. Those are the main things in terms of the challenges that a company would face. I suppose that there are challenges that have to do with the opportunity or benefits. The opportunity or benefits that I'm going to focus on is the potential for export. So if you have free trade agreements, that is your opportunity to try to expand your market into other countries. So first, I'm going to show you a little video about, this one is called How Europe's Free Trade Agreements Benefit Companies, so individual companies. So there's just 3 examples, and these examples are given to kind of like highlight, every company is going to have a different experience depending on how they try to enter a market, or they have different, industries have different rules that are changed when a free trade agreement is implemented. Some of those rules might be standardization of environmental policies or IP protection or various. So here, this video has 3 examples. So the main benefit that we're talking about for individual businesses is exporting. Here's a short video on that with 3 examples on that.
The EU has trade agreements in place with many countries. People often believe these deals only benefit big international companies, but they actually help more small businesses than you might think. Take a firm like Manufacturer. It produces traditional handmade pottery in Bolesławiec in Poland. Company owner Pavel Sviers wanted to export to South Korea, where the type of pottery his business makes is very popular. Unfortunately, high import duties make this hard. Or Ara León, a winery from Valencia in Spain that specializes in organic wines. This type of wine isn't much in demand in Spain, but it's highly sought after in Canada. The The problem was certain rules that Canada had put in place. These made it believe these deals.
I know it's terrible, but I'm going to go back and put the subtitles on there. I'll also post the video online.
Only benefit big international companies, but they actually help more small businesses than you might think. Take a firm like Manufacturer. It produces traditional handmade pottery in Bolesławiec in Poland. Company owner Pavel Sviers wanted to export to South Korea, where the type of pottery his business makes is very popular. Unfortunately, high import duties make this hard. Or Atbme L8, a winery from Valencia in Spain that specializes in organic wines. This type of wine isn't much in demand in Spain, but it's highly sought after in Canada. The problem was certain rules that Canada had put in place. These made it harder for imports of alcoholic drinks from Europe to compete on the Canadian market. There's also Reclaim, a German recycling company. It wants to export its know-how to the Canadian province of British Columbia, where one firm holds a monopoly on recycling. Reclaim's global strategy manager, Adrian Vanner, is convinced more competition could create new export opportunities for Reclaim and cut local recycling costs in half, if only Reclaim was allowed onto the market. By lifting trade barriers, EU trade deals have benefited all three companies, as well as their employees, their families, and even their communities. Look at Manufacturer today. Following a trade deal with South Korea, a third of its ceramics are now sold there. Its workforce has gone from 10 to 213 employees. And the new pottery museum in Bolesławiec welcomes 10,000 tourists a year from around the world. Just think how many enjoy a drink or a meal in one of the local restaurants. At Atbme L8, company owner Maria Sancho also has plenty of reasons to be cheerful. In 2015, her firm sold 100,000 bottles of wine in Canada, making it the largest distributor of organic wine in the province of Quebec. Once a new trade deal between the EU and Canada is up and running, Canadian wine lovers might get even more of a taste of Spanish wines. And all of those empty bottles could provide extra work for recycling companies like Reclaim. The upcoming trade deal between the EU and Canada will break down even more barriers for European companies, and could make it possible for Reclaim to bid for public contracts in Canada. These are just 3 examples of the many small companies across Europe that EU trade deals have helped, or are set to do so, and helping them matters. More than 600,000 small businesses in the EU export outside Europe, and over 30 million jobs across Europe depend on exports outside the EU. Find out more about how the EU helps small businesses export successfully. ec.europa.eu/trade.
Okay, so they gave 3 examples there. One example is is it the wine company? No, this is the wine. So we have a wine company that wants to export to Canada, so the free trade agreement has allowed them to sell their wine there. We have the German recycling company that now has access to Canada because as a service they can provide, maybe even they say recycle the wine bottles. Isn't that cute? Then we have the porcelain that's being exchanged between Poland and Korea, where they have a market. So exporting should be improved by trade agreements like this. And you know, that's a very general case, but I think this video is actually giving, it's more of a PowerPoint and it's got more detail. I don't love the voice on it. The voice on it is quite, it's recorded badly, and it's not very authoritative. It doesn't emphasize things as much as I would. So I would use it as like a PowerPoint here. It says, it's called Exploring Benefits, Advantages, Challenges, and Trade Barriers. So this is for a country called the UAE. So it's not directly related to Australia, but you can imagine things that would apply to a developed country, or the business, individual businesses, who are trying to export from developed country. So, why considering, so this is why it's good, right? Exporting, why consider exporting? Exporting enables companies to diversify themselves and to survive changes in the domestic economy. So this is, of course, something that would help individual companies and also the full economy. But the economy will be affected. The changes that will happen is basically what's going to lead to competition. Hold on one second. Exporting also helps small companies grow and become more competitive in all their markets. So that's a theory, it's an idea. But hopefully you can take advantage of the knowledge that you learn in different markets, and it'll help you in your home market. Okay, advantages of exporting. This is where it gets better. Advantages of exporting for an individual company. It can enhance your domestic competitiveness of your products. It may, if you have an international brand, maybe you'll get more attention, and people will look at you like, okay, this is international quality scale. Even some domestic companies, a lot of people don't realize that the Dutch Lady company is not from Holland. They're actually a Vietnamese company, but they've successfully branded themselves as being Dutch Lady, and it's worked pretty well. Okay, gain global market share. For a small company, market share is relative. Earn foreign exchange. This is an advantage for the country more than it is the company. Although you can put under the list of challenges is to deal with fluctuating or changing exchange rates. So I think foreign exchange is a challenge. Dealing with foreign exchange is a challenge for individual businesses. So put that under challenges. Exporting, reduce dependence on domestic market. That's true. So if you're only in one market and something happens economically, or your brand is in the last stage of the product life cycle in your country, like Oreo in the US, you can make new markets and sell your Oreos in other countries and extend your product life cycle. Again, start over, reintroduce it in new places. So I think that's how you would write that as an answer, to extend the product life cycle of local brands or domestic brands. Enhance production capacity by using excess capacity. So that means, capacity means how much you can produce. Most companies have more production capacity than they can actually use. And so they're there to leave extra space for fluctuations in demand. But in this case, if you have an international market that you can sell to, then you can expand or even make sure that you use all your existing capacity. Expand company awareness of other similar products. Okay, maybe it'll foster innovation by understanding your competition in other markets and using some innovations that you find abroad for your home market. Sell excess production capacity so you don't waste any inventory. You can ship it overseas. And you can gain information about foreign competition. Now that would not be a great answer because I would ask you why you need that information. If you took it one step further and said, okay, get information about foreign companies so you can compete with them at home. Gain information about foreign competition so I can have, use it for innovation, research, development. That would be okay. So I'm going to put this video online so you can use these PowerPoints in your notebooks, but I'm just showing it to you here. There's some good stuff in there. And then we have the challenges of exporting. So exporting is one of the main things that a company will do. This is what this question is for Australian businesses when they try to export. What is the challenge? What are some of the challenges of exporting to other countries? So this is from the Free Trade Agreement. The Free Trade Agreement lowers tariffs. So now the opportunity, the advantage for the company is to export. Challenge number one, the need to develop new promotional materials. That's not just language-based, it's cultural. Everybody's got a different kind of way of communication, so you have to make sure you don't offend people in the new country. The need to develop new promotional material. When you invest in expansion, you're going to spend money now to make money later. So short-term profits will fall, and the long-term gains may happen or they may not. So there's some risk involved, so it's a risk. That's how I would say it. Short-term profits to long-term gains means it's a risk. Expansion at any time means that you're going to expand the number of managers that you have, the amount of administrative work that needs to be done, so you're going to have costs that are going to come from that. When you're operating overseas and you're an Australian business, Australia is quite far from many countries, so it can add up, right? There's a lot of transportation costs for personnel to be able to go and to even have meetings overseas. Now some of that can be improved by using technology, but it's going to be more expensive for your employees as well. Of course, besides promotional materials, the packaging that you use will have to be modified it could be the modification of the size, the shape, so not just maybe the color scheme, and for sure the language. So there are many elements that may need to be adjusted for packaging. Finance, if you don't have enough money to finance it, you may need some, you might have to go to the bank. So then you also have issues of currency, exchange rates, as I was saying before. So the last thing is not small. It's quite long, but there's a lot there. The need to comply and follow. So free trade agreements, one of the features, the role is to make trade easier. The feature, according to our syllabus, the feature is standardization and streamlining of regulatory requirements and customs and environmental laws and things like that. So if you have those things, then your company, as an individual company, has to deal with those regulations. You have to comply. The ingredients, okay? How do you, so the labeling, right? So you have the labeling of the ingredients and you have the actual ingredients. We're talking about GMO foods, right? Some countries don't accept GMO products. The labeling has to be adjusted. We see in Vietnam that when companies export to Vietnam, they have to, maybe when they get to Vietnam, they put a label over their label that has the ingredients in Vietnamese. There might be other regulations for packaging requirements, safety requirements might be different. If you're a Vietnamese company and you're exporting to the EU, for example, or Japan, safety requirements, instruction requirements are all different. And export controls, that's the customs procedure. So you have to comply to the regulations that are in the new country. So that's a challenge, right? You have to adjust to all that. Even though the free trade agreement is making it easier, it also has a procedure, and you have to go through it and follow it and make sure that the procedures are not so different from your home country that you have to change. So most Australian products would probably meet the standards of most other countries for ingredients, for example. Challenges, lots of challenges. Exporting does not come without any trade barriers. However, some of these are to protect domestic products from foreign competition or to stimulate exports, among other factors. So, as I showed you yesterday with the NAFTA, even though the free trade agreement with Mexico was in effect, it didn't stop subsidies to corn producers in the U.S. So some free trade agreements still have some barriers in them. So yeah, the main points there are the benefits. I mean, I think they're pretty well written. The challenges and advantages of exporting. And exporting is mostly what companies are going to benefit from free trade agreements. So that's it, very short video today, but I just wanted to highlight that bullet point in our syllabus, and tomorrow I will focus on e-commerce, okay? Remember, I have a Zoom later today, so have a great day.